The message that shook his quiet evening. The evening had been calm. Sundar Pichai was sitting near the window of his quiet home, watching the last light of the day fade behind the trees. He had learned over the years to value silence, to treasure those small moments when the world slowed down. He reached for his tea, the steam carrying a soft warmth to his face. Yet beneath this calm surface, he often felt the weight of decisions, the endless responsibilities, and the constant reminder that life at the top was not as easy as it seemed from the outside. It was on this particular evening, when everything felt ordinary, that a single unexpected notification on his phone changed everything. He picked it up casually, expecting another email, maybe a report, or a reminder about tomorrow's meetings. But what appeared on the screen was not from his colleagues, not from any of his teams, not even from his family. It was a name he had not seen in over 2 decades, a name he once whispered to himself in the quiet of his student days. His heart skipped. His hand trembled ever so slightly. For a moment he thought it might be a coincidence, someone with the same name. But no, his instincts told him this was not an accident. His first love, the one who had disappeared from his life 20 years ago, had written to him. The words on the screen were simple. No introductions, no long explanations. Just a soft line. "Do you remember me?" Sundar felt his chest tighten. Memories came rushing like a storm. The streets of Chennai where they once walked. The endless conversations about dreams that felt too big for their small world. The promise of a tomorrow that never arrived. He remembered the laughter, the comfort, and the silence that came when she left. For years he had buried it under his work, his responsibilities, his rise through struggles that demanded every ounce of his strength. But tonight all of it returned with a single question. "Do you remember me?" He could have ignored it. Many would say it was wiser, safer. Life had moved on. Paths had changed and hearts had been reshaped by time. But Sundar had always believed in respect and kindness, even in the most difficult situations. His first instinct was not rejection. It was reflection. What would he say? What words could capture 20 years of silence? As he sat with the phone in his hand, he thought of the young man he had once been, walking through the dusty streets after college, his heart beating faster each time he saw her waiting at the corner. He thought of how she once inspired him to dream bigger, to imagine a world beyond what seemed possible. She was not just his first love. She was also the mirror that once showed him who he could become. He typed and erased, typed again and paused. Suspense built within him. What if she was reaching out because of regret? What if she wanted to share something he was not ready to hear? And yet, what if this was her way of finding closure or offering it to him? The possibilities twisted in his mind. He realized that no matter what, the past had opened its door. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sundar began to write. But just as he formed his first words, his phone buzzed again. Another message. This time longer. "I saw you on television last month. You looked the same, only wiser. I could not stop myself from writing. I never told you why I left so suddenly. Do you want to know the truth?" His tea had gone cold. His heartbeat was louder than the silence of the room. The truth. A secret buried for 20 years. Sundar's hands froze above the screen. Every part of him wanted to know. Yet part of him feared that whatever she said might change how he remembered her forever. And in that pause, in that trembling moment between reply and silence, he realized something. This was no ordinary conversation. This was a journey that could open old wounds or heal them in ways he never imagined. And he had to make a choice. The clock ticked. The night grew darker. Sundar finally placed the phone down on the table and closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Tomorrow his life would be the same on the outside, but inside a storm had already begun. And as he drifted into thought, a single question echoed louder than the rest. Did he really want to know the truth? The answer, when it came, would change everything. The secret waiting in the shadows the morning after felt unusually heavy. Sundar woke up before the sun, his mind already racing back to the message that had unsettled his calm world. He tried to focus on routine, brushing his teeth, reading the news, pouring himself coffee, but nothing seemed normal anymore. The phone sat quietly on the table, as though it were holding its breath along with him. Every glance he gave it reminded him of the words waiting there. Do you want to know the truth? He had built an empire of logic and order, but this was different. This was not about algorithms or business strategies. This was about the heart, about a story he thought had ended long ago but was now opening itself in dangerous new ways. Throughout the day, his mind wandered back in time. He remembered their last meeting so vividly. It had been on a rainy evening. the sky filled with thunder as though nature itself wanted to warn him. She had spoken little that day. Her eyes filled with something she never explained. She had smiled faintly, touched his hand for the briefest second, and then she was gone. He waited for days, weeks, even months, hoping for an explanation, a letter, or a word from a mutual friend. But silence was all he received. He carried that silence into adulthood, convincing himself that she had simply moved on. Now, after 2 decades, she claimed there had been a reason. The suspense of it all began to press into him. During a meeting later that morning, he found himself distracted, his mind repeating the question over and over. What was the truth? Was it something tragic, something noble, or something that would shatter the image he had carefully kept alive of her? He had always told himself that the kindness of their memories was enough, but human hearts are restless, and his was no exception. By afternoon, he could no longer ignore the pull. He stepped out into the garden behind his office, away from the sound of voices, away from the constant stream of responsibilities. With trembling hands, he unlocked his phone again. Her message still waited, patient and haunting. He began typing slowly. Yes, tell me why you left. I am ready to know. He stared at those words for a long moment before pressing send. The seconds after sending felt longer than hours. He looked at the trees swaying in the wind, at the small flowers bending under the weight of afternoon heat. But his heart was not in the present. When the notification finally came, he almost dropped the phone. Her reply was longer this time. I left because I was forced. It was not my choice. There was something I never told you, something I could not tell anyone then. My family received threats. Someone wanted me away from you, and I did not know how to protect you except by disappearing. The words hit him like a storm. Threats? Danger? He had never imagined anything like this. He had thought she simply outgrew the bond they shared, that her silence was indifference. Now he saw another possibility, one darker and more painful than he expected. His breath grew unsteady. He wanted to demand more, to ask who, why, how. Yet another part of him wanted to close the door and never look back, because some truths carry more weight than the heart can bear. He walked back inside, but nothing in the room felt real anymore. Even the faces of his colleagues blurred into a distant background. And then, before he could decide what to write, another message appeared. There is more, Sundar. Something I kept from you even then. Something that will change the way you see our past. But I'm afraid to tell you unless you promise that you will not turn away from me once you know. His hands shook so violently that he placed the phone on the desk, staring at it as though it were alive. The room grew colder, the silence sharper. 20 years of unanswered questions were unfolding in pieces. But each piece cut deeper than the last. He whispered to himself, almost like a prayer. What could be so heavy that she fears I will turn away? As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, he realized he was at the edge of a choice that could not be undone. If he asked for the rest of the truth, his life might never look the same again. If he stayed silent, the mystery would forever haunt him. The phone vibrated once more as if to push him over the edge. Her final message of the day appeared. If you are ready, meet me. Tomorrow. At the place where we last said goodbye, the cliff between past and present stretched before him. His heart raced. Could he face her after 20 years? Knowing that what she revealed might turn his memories into fire, he stared out of the window, night falling fast, and knew the answer was waiting in his own courage. The meeting that time could not erase the night before the meeting felt endless. Sundar lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts weaving 1,000 possibilities. 20 years was a lifetime. Yet the idea of seeing her again made the hours crawl. He thought about how he had changed, his responsibilities, his family, his image in the public eye, and wondered how much she had changed too. Would she look the same? Would she carry the same warmth in her eyes? Or would time and secrets have hardened her? Beneath the calmness of his face, his heart carried the weight of uncertainty, heavier than any decision he had faced in boardrooms or conferences. When morning came, the city moved at its usual pace, but to him everything felt surreal. He chose his clothes with care, not because he wanted to impress, but because he wanted to feel steady, to remind himself that he was still the same man who once stood by her side. As he drove through the streets toward the place they had last seen each other, memories surfaced in flashes, the echo of her laughter, the soft tone of her voice when she teased him, the way her hand once fit perfectly in his. Each memory carried both sweetness and pain, and together they made his chest feel tight. The place had not changed much. The same road, The same trees bending slightly over the path, and even the same small bench near the old library where they had shared countless talks about dreams and fears. Sundar parked his car at a distance and walked slowly, each step echoing like a drumbeat. The world around him blurred. The sound of traffic, the chatter of strangers, all faded into a dull background. His focus narrowed to the figure standing near the bench, waiting. She turned as he approached. For a moment, time dissolved. Her face carried lines of age, her hair sprinkled with silver. Yet her eyes, those same eyes, held the same fire he remembered. Sundar froze, caught between recognition and disbelief. She smiled gently, a smile both apologetic and hopeful. 20 years, she whispered as he came closer. He nodded, words caught in his throat. The silence between them was thick, filled with everything they wanted to say but couldn't yet. Finally he found his voice. Why now? Her eyes lowered. Because I could not carry the truth any longer. I have lived with it every single day, and I knew I had to tell you before it was too late. They sat on the old bench, and for a moment it felt like stepping back in time. She began to speak slowly, carefully, as though each word carried a risk. When I disappeared, it wasn't because I stopped loving you. It was because someone threatened my family if I continued to see you. I thought I could protect you by leaving, but I also thought I could protect them. I was young, scared, and alone. But there is something else you need to know. She paused, her hands trembling slightly. Sundar leaned in, his breath caught. You were not only my first love, she continued. You were also the father of a life I carried. I was pregnant when I left. The words struck like lightning, splitting his world into before and after. Sundar's vision blurred, his breath heavy. He stared at her, searching for any sign that this was not true, that it was some cruel mistake. But her trembling voice, her eyes wet with tears, carried no deceit. He whispered, almost choking on the words. A child? She nodded. Yes, our child. I raised him alone, away from you, away from everything. He is grown now, and he does not know who you are. The ground beneath Sundar seemed to vanish. The man who had navigated storms in business, who had stood calm before millions, now felt powerless before a single revelation. His mind filled with questions, doubts, fears. How had she carried this secret for so long? What kind of life had their child lived without him? And why had fate chosen this moment to reveal it? His voice broke as he asked, Where is he now? Her reply was soft but carried the weight of destiny. He is here, Sundar. He wants to meet you. Sundar's world tilted. He turned his head slowly, and in the distance he saw a young man walking toward them. The steps grew louder, each one pushing his heart faster. Sundar felt a mix of terror and longing. 20 years of silence had just shattered, and the face of a past he never knew he had was now only moments away. The face of the unknown son. The young man walked slowly toward them, his step steady, but his expression unreadable. Sundar felt his pulse racing in a way he had never known before. It was not like the nervousness of giving a speech, nor the tension of a high-stakes decision. This was personal, raw, and unprepared. His throat dried as he studied the figure approaching. The boy, no, not a boy anymore, but a grown man, looked to be in his early 20s. Tall, lean, with eyes that seemed familiar yet distant. Sundar could not move. He felt as though his entire body was frozen, while his mind screamed with questions that had no answers yet. The woman beside him, his first love, whispered softly, This is Arjun. Her voice broke on the name, carrying both pride and sorrow. Sundar repeated it silently. Arjun, letting the sound sink into his heart. The young man stopped a few steps away, his gaze flickering between his mother and Sundar. There was no warmth in his eyes. No instant recognition, only caution. Sundar's heart ached. He had imagined for a split second that perhaps the moment would be magical, that the son he never knew would run into his arms with tears and relief. But reality was colder. So you are him, Arjun said finally, his tone calm but sharp. The man who never came. The words pierced Sundar like a blade. He wanted to protest, to explain that he had not even known of his existence, but he swallowed the urge. This was not the moment for excuses. This was the moment to listen. Yes, Sundar whispered, his voice shaking. I am him. The silence between them stretched long. Sundar studied his son's face more closely now. The sharp jaw, the determined eyes, the slight hesitation in his stance. All of it carried fragments of himself. Yet Arjun also carried something else. A guardedness, a shield built over years of unanswered questions. Sundar realized painfully that while he had been shaping the world, his son had been shaping a life without him. Why now? Arjun asked. his voice trembling slightly though he tried to hide it. Why do you show up in my life when I never had you in my childhood? Do you know what it was like to see my friends with their fathers? While I asked my mother about mine and she kept silent? Do you know what it feels like to grow up incomplete? Sundar's chest tightened. Every word was a wound he deserved. He glanced at her, his first love, who lowered her eyes in guilt and sorrow. But Sundar did not look away from Arjun again. I did not know, he said slowly, each word heavy with regret. If I had known, I would have been there. I cannot change the past, but if you allow me, I want to be here now. Arjun's jaw clenched. He looked away toward the horizon as though searching for an answer beyond them. You say that, he murmured. But where were you when we needed you most? Do you know the sacrifices my mother made? Do you know the nights I asked myself if I was not worthy enough for a father to stay? Sundar's hands trembled in his lap. For the first time in many years, he felt powerless, stripped of all titles and achievements. Here he was not a leader, not a CEO, not a figure admired by millions. Here he was just a man facing the cost of a lost past. And yet, in that moment of pain, he also felt a spark of resilience. He could not rewrite history, but he could fight for the present. He leaned forward, his voice firm though soft. I may not deserve your forgiveness today, but I will not walk away again. If you let me, I will prove through actions, not words, that I want to be part of your life. You have every right to doubt me, to be angry with me, but give me the chance to earn your trust. Arjun turned his gaze back to him, his eyes glistening though he refused to let the tears fall. He wanted to speak, to release the storm inside, but before he could, his mother placed a gentle hand on his arm. Arjun, she whispered, he is telling the truth. He did not abandon us. I kept the truth from him because I thought I was protecting him and you, but now I realize the silence has hurt us all. The young man pulled his arm away gently, his voice sharper. The truth came too late. Too late for birthdays, too late for school days, too late for all the times I asked who I really was. Sundar felt each word like another cut. He wanted to answer, but before he could, Arjun's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. He stood abruptly, his voice tense. I have to go. This conversation isn't over. He turned and walked away quickly, leaving Sundar and his first love sitting in stunned silence. Sundar's heart raced with questions. Who had messaged Arjun? Why did his expression change so suddenly? And why did he walk away with such urgency? As the young man's figure disappeared into the distance, Sundar realized that the reunion was not only about healing old wounds. There was something else, something hidden that was pulling his son away, and the mystery had only just begun. Shadows in the life of Arjun. The night after their meeting, Sundar could not sleep. He replayed every detail in his mind, especially the sudden shift in Arjun's face when that message appeared on his phone. It was not just irritation or a casual distraction. It was something darker, heavier, almost like fear. Sundar sat by his window again, watching the silent city lights, asking himself questions he had no answers for. What could his son be hiding? And why did he feel so powerless? As though he had lost him again only moments after finding him. The following day he called her. The woman who had carried this secret for 2 decades. Her voice trembled when she answered, as though she had expected him to reach out. He is restless, she said. He has been carrying something on his own. I tried to help, but he refuses to tell me everything. He is proud just like you, and stubborn too. Sundar listened in silence, his chest tightening at the thought of his son carrying a hidden burden. He knew he could not press Arjun too hard. Trust was still fragile, and one wrong step could shatter the chance of connection. Yet fate had other plans. Later that evening, as Sundar left his office, he saw Arjun standing outside, waiting. The young man looked restless, his hands shoved into his pockets, his eyes darting from one corner of the street to another. When Sundar approached, Arjun spoke first, his voice low and tense. I didn't come to talk about the past, he said sharply. I came because I need help, and you are the only one who might have the power to stop this. Sundar froze. The weight of those words struck him immediately. Stop what? He asked softly. Arjun looked around as if making sure no one was listening. Then he whispered, someone is following me. Someone who has been sending me threats. The message you saw yesterday, it wasn't from a friend. It was from them. They know about you now. They know about us. A chill passed through Sundar's body. It echoed the very thing she had confessed earlier, that long ago her family had been threatened if she stayed with him. Now, decades later, it seemed the shadows of the past had returned, but this time they had found their way to his son. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Sundar asked, his voice trembling. Because I didn't trust you. Arjun replied honestly, his eyes burning with pain. You just appeared in my life. I thought you might turn away, that you wouldn't care. But yesterday, I saw something in your face. Maybe you do care. So now I'm telling you. Sundar felt a surge of both sorrow and determination. I do care, he said firmly. And I will protect you. Whatever this is, we will face it together. For the first time, Arjun's guarded eyes softened, though only slightly. It was not forgiveness, but it was the beginning of something fragile. Yet before Sundar could feel relief, Arjun pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to him. The paper was crumpled, the ink slightly smeared, but the words were clear enough. Leave the boy, or you both will regret it. Sundar read it twice, his hands tightening around the page. The threat was direct, cruel, and unmistakable. He looked at his son, whose jaw clenched with anger. They want me gone, Arjun said bitterly. But I won't run. Not again. Sundar's mind raced. Who could want this? Was it someone from the past? Someone who had tried to break them apart all those years ago? Or was it something new? A danger tied not to love but to power, jealousy, or greed? He placed a steady hand on Arjun's shoulder. We will not run. But we must be careful. This is bigger than both of us. Tell me everything you know. When did it start? What have they said before this? Arjun hesitated, his eyes flickering with a storm of emotions. Finally, he whispered, There is one more thing I didn't tell you. I think I know who is behind it. Sundar's heart pounded louder than the traffic around them. He leaned in, his voice low and urgent. Who, Arjun? Who is it? The young man opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, a loud sound echoed from the street behind them. A car door slammed, footsteps rushed, and suddenly both Sundar and Arjun turned their heads sharply. Someone was watching them. The truth that set them free. The footsteps grew louder, echoing against the concrete walls of the street. Sundar instinctively stepped slightly in front of Arjun, his protective instinct awakening in a way he had never felt before. It was not the instinct of a leader guarding a company or an executive guarding a decision. It was the raw instinct of a father, even if the bond had only just begun. Arjun clenched his fists, ready to defend himself, but the shadow that emerged from the dim light was not a stranger. It was a man from the past, one Sundar recognized immediately, though he had not seen him for decades. It was her older brother. The years had changed him, but his eyes still carried the same hardness Sundar remembered. Memories flashed, how he had disapproved of their relationship long ago, how he had whispered threats of consequence if she did not walk away. Sundar's heart dropped as the truth struck him like lightning. It had been him all along, the unseen hand that had torn them apart 20 years ago, and now he was the one threatening their son. You should have stayed away, the man hissed, his voice dripping with anger. I told her then, and I'm telling you now. Your world is dangerous, Sundar. Powerful men like you destroy everything you touch. I was not going to let my sister's life be ruined by you, and I will not let you claim her son now. Arjun's face twisted with shock and betrayal. You? He shouted, his voice breaking. You were the one who kept him away from me. You were the one who forced her into silence. The man's eyes flickered with guilt, but he masked it quickly. I did what I had to. You were safer without him. She was safer without him. Sundar stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with quiet strength. No, you did not protect them. You stole from them. You stole 20 years of a child's life, 20 years of a mother's love, 20 years of a father's chance to be there. That is not protection. That is control and fear disguised as care. The air between them grew heavy, every word trembling with old pain. Arjun looked at his uncle with eyes full of fire. You say you protected me, but all I see is the man who lied to me, who made me believe I was abandoned. Do you have any idea how many nights I wished I knew who I was? How many mornings I woke up with questions that never had answers? His uncle's face cracked for the first time, a flicker of regret breaking through. But it was too late. The truth was now out, and nothing could take back the years lost. Silence hung over them until Sundar placed his hand gently on Arjun's shoulder. You cannot change the past, he said softly, his voice almost like a whisper to himself as much as to his son. But we can choose what we do with today. We can choose to forgive, or we can choose to let bitterness own us. I cannot ask you to forgive me for the years I missed, but I can promise you this. I will never walk away again. Tears glistened in Arjun's eyes now, though he fought them with all his pride. He turned to Sundar, his voice breaking for the first time. I don't know how to forgive 20 years, But I don't want to lose 20 more. Maybe we can start with today." The words fell like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Sundar's chest tightened as emotions surged through him. He did not embrace Arjun immediately, fearing the moment might shatter. But when Arjun finally leaned forward, their arms wrapped around each other in a hesitant but powerful embrace. It was not perfect. It was not easy. But it was real. His first love stood nearby, tears streaming silently down her face. After all the secrets, after all the silence, the three of them finally stood in the same light, no longer broken by lies. As his uncle stepped back, his face shadowed with shame, Sundar looked at him one last time. "You cannot undo what you have done, but you can choose to let go of this fear. Let him live. Let us live." The man lowered his head, and though he said nothing, the fight in his eyes faded. That night, as Sundar walked with Arjun and her by his side, he realized something profound. The story of his life had never been about power or success. It had always been about connection, about respect, humility, resilience, and the courage to love even when it was difficult. The years they lost would never return, but the years ahead were now theirs to create. And as he held on to the moment, Sundar whispered quietly, almost to himself, "Sometimes the heart finds its way back no matter how far it has traveled."